Hello and welcome to another episode of Game Theory, the #1 MMA DFS prep show in all of the land. I am your host Monk, aka the Monkmatician. And in this very episode, we're going to be breaking down all 12 fights. Yes, there are 12 fights. It's been on again, off again, 11, 12. We have 12 for UFC Nashville, taking place this Saturday, August 5th in Nashville, Tennessee. We've got Sandhagen and Font, which has got to be a barn burner. Tatiana Suarez on this card fighting Andrade. We've got several decent matchups, and it's looking good for DraftKings. Guys, real quick, some show notes. Ordered my new mic, ordered my audio interface, all the gadgets that come with it. That will be here Thursday, so hopefully we're going to get a big audio upgrade before the nickname show happening this Thursday on the Monkmatics channel. So guys, that's about it for show notes. That wasn't much. Let's get right into the fights.
Showtime! We're gonna go nuts in there!
We're going to try to keep these quick tonight. First fight of the night, we've got Almabaev taking on Osbourne. Osbourne at 7,600 this week. A few decent stats. He's got a relatively high ceiling, but a basically non-existent floor. Gets outpaced inside the distance. Controls only 36.5% of all grappling time he's involved in. He's actually getting outpaced overall. At distance, it's basically identical with his opponent. 2 of his 4 UFC wins in 3-round flyweight fights have been round 1 finishes, and all 3 of his losses at the weight class have also been round 1 finish losses. 71% takedown defense, not terrible, but overall just some pretty run-of-the-mill numbers for Osbourne. Meanwhile, he's taking on debutant Almabaev. 8,600 this week for the newcomer. Has a decent last 5 strength of schedule, which you don't normally see with UFC newcomers. The ceiling and the floor that you're seeing is just the average for the division. What is there to say? A guy that comes out wearing this flag, I'm not going to bet against him likely. Even if he loses, that's fine. I got to see it happen first. Osbourne is a good measuring stick for any UFC debutant, that is for sure. I'm probably leaning Almabaev here. 8,600 isn't too much. Just be careful. We might see what happened with what's his name in the flyweight division, the newcomer from Kazakhstan that fought about 2 weeks ago, I think. I don't remember who he fought, but he won and did not score. Oh, it was the guy who fought Tyson Nam. Did not score very well at all. That same thing could happen here. However, he's much cheaper than the guy I'm talking about at 8,600. So give me a shot on a little bit of both of these guys for DraftKings. But overall, Osbourne not historically scoring very well and getting finished every time he loses.
Fuck little bodies!
Sean Woodson taking on what seems to be his 45th opponent of the week. Now it is all settled. I know you think I'm about to say Myron Santos, but it is in fact Dennis Buzukja. I'm just going to call him Dennis Buzukja because that name is awesome. Let's start with Buzukja. Also, there's no salaries for this fight. I have no idea what they're going to be. They could be 82, 8,000. 9,200 is open, 9,400, 9,600. There's a very low salary at 82 and 8,000, and then some very high salaries open. So I would guess it's 82, 8,000, but I really have no idea.
Oh my God! He admitted it!
Let's start with Dennis Buzukja. I only logged 1 of his Dana White Contender Series fights. He did lose his first one way back in 2020 to Melsik Bagdasaryan. I just figured that was too far in the past, and it's a Dana White Contender Series fight. I know I need more stats, blah, blah, blah. We're only using 1 of the fights, and it was the last one. Buzukja outpacing his opponent 4.5 points a minute to just 2, but inside the distance, he got outpaced by almost a point a minute. Scored only 77 points in that decision win. Controlled just 20% of the grappling time overall. Has the worst last 5 strength of schedule on the entire card, as you would probably expect, at 58.75. Pretty diverse striker. 61% of all significant strikes landed were to the head, 37% to the body, and just 2% leg kicks. So safe to say, doesn't like to throw too many leg kicks. Sean Woodson throws some leg kicks, but mostly just targeting the head. Has an 85% takedown defense. 3-1-1 in the UFC. Inside the distance, he's getting worked over. Less than a point per minute, allowing 4.5. Scores just 88.5 points when he wins. Allows 104 when he loses. Controls just 10% of the grappling time. Not much more to say about this one. This could be a shit show. You probably want a bit of both sides, unfortunately, at the featherweight division here. But if they do come in at 82 and 8,000, you don't really have to spend too much. My pick will probably be Woodson, but I would not be surprised if Buzukja gets a UFC debut win. Jake Hadley, 8,800 this week, taking on Cody Durden at 7,400. I love this fight for DraftKings, and here's why. Cody Durden's in it. When he wins, 105 points is what he scores. When he loses, 109 is what he gives up. 6 points a minute inside the distance, allowing less than 1. He's outscoring his opponents at distance and overall scoring well over 5 points a minute. Has a very high ceiling, 83% takedown defense, and when he fights inside the distance, he controls 94% of all grappling time he's involved in. Both of his losses were round 1 losses. His most recent was to M.O.N.K 4 fights ago, and he got subbed within 1 minute. One of his 4 wins, he has finished someone in the first round. I believe that would have been JP Bays.
You know, it's with all respect.
Just over a minute. A bit of a headhunter at 72% of his significant strikes. 72 strength of schedule is very good. I love this fight for DraftKings, and the Durden side at 7,400 has a lot of potential value to offer. Meanwhile, Jake Hadley at 8,800, he is 2-1 in the UFC. Inside the distance, scoring just 1.73 points a minute, allowing 3.6. When he wins, 107 is what he scores on average. 80 bonus points per win. Both of his wins have netted him over 100 points. Just a 40% takedown defense. 26% of all grappling time he's involved in. Jake Hadley controls 73.6 strength of schedule, and a very diverse striker with just 53% of his strikes targeting the head, 27 to the body, and 20% to the legs. Guys, if Jake Hadley wins, I think he scores very well. Durden gives up a ton of points, but Hadley does have holes in the grappling, and that is all that Durden does. So it's going to be whoever can get their game off, whoever can keep their cardio going more. And Durden on a 3-fight win streak, like I said, last losing to Mohammed. Jake Hadley, 2 in a row against Gordon and Candelario. Like I said, I love this fight for DraftKings. I think the winner has potential to score very well and possibly make the optimal lineup.
Tough little bodies!
Another one I absolutely love for DraftKings.
I never met a fight I didn't like.
Billy Quarantillo, 8,900 this week, taking on Damon Jackson at 7,300. The reason why I love it, Damon Jackson allowing 106.5 points per loss over his 2 losses in 3-round featherweight fights, scoring just 91 points. But that is a big number per loss. Meanwhile, Billy Q, 126.75 points per win over 4 wins in 3-round featherweight fights, and he gives up 116 per loss over 3 losses. If Billy Q's in a fight, I am playing both sides of that fight regardless. I mean, I don't even have to read the rest of the stats, although I will read a few of them. Quarantillo with almost a 140-point ceiling and the highest floor on the card as well, 70.5. All 4 of his wins have netted him 100 points or better, controls 62, almost 63% of all grappling time he's involved in. Just a 61% takedown defense, but a very good strength of schedule overall. Fantastic numbers for DraftKings for Billy Q. Like I said, targeting both sides of this one. And Damon Jackson, again, when he loses, 107 points. 3 of his 5 wins, however, have netted him over 100 points. 70% of all grappling time he's involved in, he is controlling, and Jackson with just a 41% takedown defense. Decent strength of schedule, 1 round 1 finish win and 1 round 1 finish loss as well. Decent numbers for DraftKings overall. I love the 3 out of 5 over 100 points for Damon Jackson, and I love everything about how Billy Q scores. I mean, almost 5.5 points per minute, over 5 points a minute at distance, and inside the distance well over 4, and his opponents are scoring a ton of points on him as well. So definitely going to be targeting this fight at 89 and 73. I don't think either guy's too expensive relative to what their potential value is, and so I do really like this one for DraftKings. The 4-0 Jeremiah Wells taking on Carlston Harris, who is 2-1 in 3-round welterweight fights. Let's start with the Wells side of things. A DraftKings darling so far when it comes to scoring per minute, over 5 points. At distance, 5.5 points per minute. Inside the distance, 4.28 points a minute, allowing just 0.66 back at him. So very, very good numbers there inside the distance. Scoring on average 103.5 points per win over his 4 UFC wins. 3 of those wins, 100 points or better. Controls 91% of all grappling time he's involved in. Strength of schedule leaves a bit to be desired, with his last 4 opponents being Semmelsberger, Court McGee, Blood Diamond, and Warley Alves. Bit of a headhunter, 85% of his strikes target the head, 0% to the legs. Meanwhile, Carlston Harris at 7,700. Inside the distance leaves a bit to be desired as he is getting outpaced by about 0.3 points per minute. 90 bonus points per win. He is 3-1 in the UFC, but only 2-1 in 3-round welterweight fights. Both of those wins have been in the first round, and he did lose in the first round to Shavkat as well. So all 3 fights at the weight class have been first round finishes. 77.96 strength of schedule, one of the best on the card. But that's what happens when you fight undefeated guys with good records like Shavkat Rakhmonov. Very diverse striker here. 57% of all strikes landed to the head, 33% to the body, and 10% to the legs. So I like both guys as far as DraftKings goes. Harris scoring 102 points per win on average, and when he did lose to Shavkat, gave up well over 100 points at 112. Both guys scoring a decent amount, both guys getting scored on a decent amount as well. And both guys are relatively cheap, 8,500, 7,700. I don't mind the pricing here. I will be on this one, not quite as much as the last two, but I'll definitely have my fair share of this one. I'm probably picking Wells, but I'm not confident, and I would not be surprised if Harris put up a decent score at 7,700 this week. Kyler Phillips, 9,000 this week, taking on Barcelos at 7,200. Let's start with Barcelos. Very decent score, especially inside the distance, scoring 5.5 points per minute, allowing less than 1. His ceiling is a decent 115, but he's averaging less than 100 points, just 97 per win, in fact. 3 of his 5 wins in 3-round bantamweight fights have cleared the 100-point mark, which is a good sign. 100% takedown defense, also very good, and controls 85% of all grappling time he's involved in. No round 1 finishes so far. Did get that one round 1 finish loss against Umar Nurmagomedov in his last fight, but that was against Umar Nurmagomedov. 72.88 strength of schedule, so pretty good there. Kyler Phillips on the other side, what are we getting for $9,000? He hasn't fought in almost a year and a half. He is 4-1 in 3-round bantamweight fights. Inside the distance, scoring even better than Barcelos, 6.23 points a minute, allowing just under 2. However, when he wins, scoring just 90 points per win on average. Never has he scored 100 points in a win. That is very disconcerting, allowing just 71 when he loses, and that was against Hadley and Paiva in his second to last fight. Controls 66.86% of all grappling time he's involved in. No round 1 finish wins or losses, and a just under 70 strength of schedule in his last 5. So while I do like this fight and I do think it will be entertaining, I tend to think it goes all 3 rounds, or at least into the 3rd round, and therefore I don't think it scores very well. I think the winner's going to be right in their average of 85 to 95 points, and I think especially on the Phillips side we can avoid that. Maybe a bit of Barcelos, as a, because if he scores 90 points at 7,200, depending on the other scores, that could be okay, and we're looking at a chance at a possible optimal lineup. So maybe a little bit more Barcelos. I like Phillips probably to win. I just don't think he's going to score very well at all. Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Ludovic Klein.
No, it wasn't me, it was Ignacio, he's the one!
Bahamondes decent scoring at distance, 3.5 points a minute, allowing just 2. In his 3 UFC wins, averaging just 90.86 points per win. He put up 103 against Roberts, 99 against Zhu Rong, but only 69 against Trey Ogden. That was at catchweight. Actually, 3 of his 4 fights have been at catchweight so far, so a pretty rough start for Ignacio Bahamondes and his opponents when it comes to making weight. 94% takedown defense is a great number, controlling 65% of all grappling time he's involved in. Very diverse striker with just 52% of his significant strikes targeting the head. 72 strength of schedule is also a very good number. Okay ceiling, very good floor. It's just the 91 points per win does worry me a bit. One of those 3 wins, as I mentioned, did clear over 100 points. Meanwhile, Ludovic Klein, even worse numbers when it comes to DraftKings scoring, averaging just 83 points per win. He tends to go to decision, as 3 of his 5 fights have gone all 15 minutes. 82% takedown defense, controls almost 70% of all grappling time he's involved in. Very good strength of schedule, and also a very, very diverse striker in his own right. Just less leg strikes overall compared to Ignacio Bahamondes here. I think the numbers are very good. It should be noted that Ignacio Bahamondes has an 8-inch height advantage here, and the reach just 3 inches, but still that height advantage is crazy. He is all over the place with those kicks, Ludovic Klein is going to have to watch out. But then Ludovic Klein also, I think, was he the one that landed that jumping Chun-Li kick on Mason Jones? I can't remember. Both of these guys have looked decent lately, especially, you know, Bahamondes dropping his UFC debut to John McDessie and winning his last 3 fights. Ludovic Klein 2-2 with 1 draw in his very last fight. So I think this one's going to be pretty good. Again, the DraftKings points per win does worry me a bit. I do favor Bahamondes. 9,100 is a bit expensive. In fact, it is the second highest salary he's ever been. Trey Ogden, he was 9,400. So we are having to pay up for Bahamondes. I don't know if it's going to be worth it this week with those very, very low DraftKings per win numbers. Light heavyweight fight between Tanner Boser, 8,700, and Alexa Camur at 7,500. Let's see what we're getting for Tanner Boser at that kind of crazy high price. 1.18 points per minute inside the distance, getting hit with 4.2 points a minute. Barely over 2 points a minute overall, and at distance, very low DraftKings points per win number at 88.5 over his 4 UFC wins. Relatively low ceiling, okay floor at 40 points, 65 bonus points per win, but that's not really translating to high scores, as only 1 of his 4 fights has netted him over 100 points. 61% takedown defense, controls just 11% of all grappling time he's involved in. Strength of schedule is not good at 66.72, but a very diverse striker. Only 43% of all significant strikes landed have been to the head. 37% leg kicks for Tanner Boser. Meanwhile, Alexa Camur, he's back. It's been well over 2 years since he last fought Nicky Gums. Lost that fight, lost to Thick Willie Knight, beat Justin Ledet in his UFC debut, scored only 68.6 points in that win against Ledet. Inside the distance, he's getting outpaced 2-1. 50% takedown defense, controls just 30% of all grappling time he's involved in. Decent last 5 strength of schedule, decent striking diversity as well. Again, 1-2 in the UFC and has not looked good. He is still very young, 27 years old, almost 28 in about a month and a half. So we're going to have to see how Alexa Camur looks. Tanner Boser has not looked great himself. 1-4 over his last 5 fights, dropping to Ion Cutelaba, Rodrigo Nascimento, Ilir Latifi, and Andrei Arlovsky. Only win was against Ovid St. Preux, in which he scored 93.6 points at heavyweight in 2021. So Boser with the 88 points per win, Camur scoring 68 when he did win, giving up 82 when he loses, and Boser giving up only 71 when he loses. I don't really like this fight for DraftKings. I will be targeting other fights, especially in this price range, over Boser versus Camur this week. Here we've got Diego Lopes in what's basically his UFC debut. In his first fight, as you can see, all of the red numbers here, he took on Movsar Evloev on very short notice, so we should just throw that out.
I was supposed to die, but a fish bumped me out with its nose.
Fresh start for Lopes at 8,300. 2-3, however, in his last 5, which should be noted. Gavin Tucker, 7,900, coming off of shoulder surgery, I do believe. Inside the distance, 5.5 points a minute, but getting 5 points a minute scored on him. Other than that, pretty pedestrian numbers. 93.59 points per win. And when he did lose, twice actually, once was against Ige, once was against Ricky Glenn, he's allowing 132 points per loss on average. So I would definitely put some of Lopes in your lineups. I actually like him in this fight. Hopefully, you know, by submission would be super nice. But 132 points allowed on average. Let's just see here. Dan Ige finished him in under 30 seconds. So he scored like 125 points in that fight. Meanwhile, he fought Ricky Glenn. Glenn scored 139 points in that fight. So yeah, Gavin Tucker giving up a shitload of points when he loses. Maybe you should target this one a little bit more than I was originally thinking. 56% of all grappling time he's involved in, Tucker does control. 54% takedown defense is no good. 72 strength of schedule is pretty good, and a relatively diverse striker. 14% leg kicks, 25% body strikes as well. So I like Lopes at 8,300. I love how many points Tucker gives up when he loses. And at 7,900, with some of these numbers, I don't mind a little bit of Tucker as well.
At that price point, he can hit.
Especially since we don't really know how Lopes is going to look. Just 2-3 in his last 5, and we've got to throw that Movsar fight out. So give me some of Lopes, give me some of Tucker, and hopefully the winner scores well enough to get close to the optimal lineup. Kennedy Nzechukwu, 8,400, taking on Dustin Jacoby at 7,800. Let's start with Jacoby. Relatively average scoring overall. I mean, 3.66 per minute is about average. 3.5 at distance, getting outpaced almost 2-1 inside the distance, though, allowing 6.5 points per minute. Does score 100 points per win over his 5 3-round light heavyweight wins, and when he does lose, which has happened twice, averaging just 68 points given up to his opponents. 66 bonus points per win is a decent number. 3 of his 5 wins over 100 points. You do love to see that. 54% takedown defense is a bit subpar, but when he is fighting inside the distance, which is less than 17%, he does control almost 60% of that grappling time. 74 last 5 strength of schedule. 3 of his 5 wins at the weight class have been round 1 finish wins. Fantastic. That ups his DraftKings ownership for me personally. Dustin Jacoby, a decent DraftKings play in my opinion at 7,800. What puts it over the top is the triple digits per win. 3 of his 5 wins over 100, and 3 of those wins are round 1 finish wins, so I do love to see that. Meanwhile, Kennedy Nzechukwu, 81% takedown defense, getting outpaced overall 2.8 to 3. Less than average DraftKings points per win. 87 is all he gets per win, allowing just 82 when he does lose. 3 of his 6 wins, however, over 100 points, so he is a bit up and down when it comes to DraftKings scoring, controlling 50.21% of all grappling time he's involved in. No first round finishes, decent strength of schedule, and definite headhunter with 86% of all significant strikes landing to the head, just 1% to the legs. So I do favor Dustin Jacoby for DraftKings, and at 7,800, between the salary, the 3 wins over 100, and the 3 round 1 finish wins, that does up my exposure for Dustin Jacoby a decent amount, probably at least by 10% from what I was previously thinking. Meanwhile, Kennedy, like I said, a bit up and down, and the fact that Jacoby doesn't even allow 70 points on average when he loses makes me want to fade him just a little bit in GPP tournaments. For DraftKings, I definitely prefer Dustin Jacoby. If we're talking about must-play fights for UFC Nashville, the co-main event between Tatiana Suarez and Jessica Andrade has got to be one of them. Suarez, 9,500 this week. She was 9,600 against Montana De La Rosa. Didn't quite score 100 points, 99.75 there. Obviously did not make the optimal lineup. However, Jessica Andrade, she has been not looking herself lately and giving up a ton of points. Yan Xiaonan scored 110 against her. Aaron Blanchfield scored 97 against her as well. So right around that 100-point mark is what Andrade has been giving up lately. If Andrade wins at the salary of 6,700 and the fact her scoring numbers are off the charts, she's definitely going to make the optimal lineup. She's averaging 123 points per win in 3-round strawweight fights over her career. One of the highest ceilings, if not the highest ceiling on the entire card. 5 of her 6 wins at the weight class in 3-round fights specifically have been 100 points or better for her. 96% of all grappling time she's involved in, she controls. 88% takedown defense. Her last 5 strength of schedule is crazy good. 2 round 1 finish wins and 1 round 1 finish loss. A pretty diverse striker. I love all of the numbers I see from Andrade. Oh yeah, 11 points scored per minute inside the distance, while she allows less than 2, scoring almost 6 points a minute overall. I mean, every stat I just read is crazy good for Jessica Andrade. That said, she's taking on Tatiana Suarez, 6-0 in the UFC, 5-0 in 3-round strawweight fights, 6.5 points a minute inside the distance. I mean, 120 points per win, 100% takedown defense. 4 of her 5 wins over 100, controls 99% of all grappling time she's involved in, and a relatively diverse striker in her own right. 2 round 1 finish wins. I mean, whoever you play in this fight, I think someone has a very good chance of making the optimal lineup. Obviously, as I said, if Andrade wins, she's going to be optimal at 6,700. 6,700 has about a 4% win rate, so just keep that in mind. Tatiana Suarez, 9,500, one of the best salaries to play overall, makes the optimal lineup somewhere between 40 and 45% of the time, and Suarez does score incredibly well. So I love this fight for DraftKings. I will be playing a ton of it. The pick is probably Suarez, but I will have way more than I usually do of the $6,700 salary this week. In a card that has several must-play fights on it, in my opinion, let's add one more. Cory Sandhagen taking on Rob Font, 5-round. This one is at catchweight. The stats you see are their bantamweight stats. Obviously, they don't have a ton of fights at catchweight, but this one is at 140. But the 5-round makes it even more fun.
So much more fun.
DraftKings wise, Sandhagen, incredible. 106 points per win. When he loses, which has happened 3 times, like I said, he's allowing 104.6. Decent ceiling, over 60 bonus points per win, 55%. So what is that? 5 of his 9 UFC wins over 100 points. 55% grappling time controlled, 74.6 strength of schedule, at least, what is that, 2 round 1 finish wins and 1 round 1 finish loss, 67% of all strikes landed to the head, decent leg striking percentage, blah, blah, blah. Rob Font, I'm going to breeze through these because I have a more important stat to get to overall. Rob Font, very good scorer, 108 points per win over his 10 UFC wins. Let's see, allowing 97 when he does lose, 66 bonus points per win. 8 of his 10 wins over 100 points for Rob Font. 55% takedown defense.
55 burgers, 55 fries, 55 tacos, 55 pies, and 155 taters.
Very good strength of schedule. Let's see, 4 of his wins, round 1 finishes. 1 of his losses, round 1 finish loss. Yeah, very, very good numbers this week. Sandhagen, 9,300, a bit expensive. Rob Font, only 6,900. You're trying to tell me that I'm not going to have a ton of Rob Font at $6,900. Here's the stat that's most important, and this is why this is a must-play fight, whether it's GPP tournaments or cash. This fight between Sandhagen, Rob Font, and whoever they've fought since January 1st of 2021 has a 122% optimal rate. 122%.
Okay.
Guys, Sandhagen made optimal when he fought Edgar. When Sandhagen lost to Dillashaw, Dillashaw made optimal. When Sandhagen lost to Jan and Sandhagen made optimal. That was an optimal stack. Kenan Song, he got the win and the optimal. And Chito Vera, Sandhagen got the win and optimal. So if you're counting, Sandhagen 3-2 in his last 5, 4 times optimal out of those 5 fights. Rob Font. Font beat Garbrandt, made optimal. Lost to Aldo, Aldo optimal. Font lost to Vera. Vera and Font made optimal. Another optimal stack. And he beat Yanez and Font was optimal. That said, that is 11 fights. That's either Font, Sandhagen, or their opponents have been optimal, and twice Font and Sandhagen have been involved in optimal stacks, guys. 11 times optimal out of only 9 fights is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. This is why I absolutely love the numbers, because you don't see stuff like this all the time.
Out of the fucking blue.
That is a very long-winded way to say play this fight. Font's going to be optimal if he wins at 6,900. Sandhagen in a 5-round decision could be optimal as well. Both of these guys, we could see a third optimal stack between these two. So yeah, give me this fight. I will be close to 100% on this 5-round fight. That's going to do it for game theory. Let's throw it over to M.O.N.K and see who M.O.N.K has for UFC Nashville. M.O.N.K's picks for UFC Nashville. M.O.N.K is a thing that I built that just picks fights based on a ton of different data points, and it spits out winners. Last week we went 6 of 11, barely over 50%, but better than we have been doing the past couple weeks. A bit of a down slope. We are 184 out of 312 correct, which is just under 59%. I think me personally, I'm at about 62% overall for the year, so I'm really rubbing it in M.O.N.K's face. He has got this week 6 dogs picked and 6 favorites and a ton of finishes. Let's check it out. Ode Osbourne over newcomer Asu Almabaev by finish. Dennis Buzukja, short notice over Sean Woodson, decision win for Buzukja. Cody Durden, finish win over Hadley. Damon Jackson, finish win over Billy Q. That's 4 underdogs in a row to start the card off. My God, absolute chaos will ensue if that happens. Jeremiah Wells by finish. Kyler Phillips by decision. Ignacio Bahamondes by finish. Alexa Camur by decision. Gavin Tucker by decision. Interesting. Kennedy Nzechukwu by finish. Tatiana Suarez by finish. And to round us out, Cory Sandhagen over Rob Font by decision. If this fight goes to decision, we could see 250, 300 points scored in this fight. So, man, I am really excited for this card. Let's throw it over to M.O.N.K to see who he picks for the M.O.N.K pick of the week. Most owned, no nonsense, right here, UFC Nashville.
I'm honestly done. I don't want to read anymore.
The most owned, no nonsense Monk pick of the week for UFC Nashville is going to be Cory Sandhagen, guys. I mean, I already read you all the stats. I read you the 122% optimal rate between these guys. Both guys involved in optimal stacks. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. A very high floor and an incredibly high ceiling as well for Cory Sandhagen. Whether this fight finishes early or gets extended, I firmly believe that the winner will score incredibly well, and I am leaning Sandhagen to beat Rob Font on Saturday in Nashville. So the Monk most owned, no nonsense pick of the week is going to be none other than the $9,300 Cory Sandhagen. Let's go. That is gonna do it. All 12 fights looked at from a DraftKings perspective, tried to give you all of the most pertinent information so you can pair this with your fight tape and all the other cappers you listen to and make that money this weekend, guys. UFC Nashville happening on Saturday. We have got a banger and a very good card, in my opinion, for DraftKings. Do not miss it. Be sure to hit the like, hit the sub on this video, and as usual, I want all of you to enjoy the fights. So, enjoy, and we will see you in the next one.
I love this stuff. Only come here if you like that stuff.